Hello again. Well, I'm back to another book review. It's been a little bit since I've done one of these, and it's been a while since I put something out on this channel, and there's a reason for that. I've been busy. If you're watching this video, then you probably know that Brad Jones, aka the Cinema Snob, has put out a new novel. It appears to be something he's really gotten into. He's put out one a year since 2023, the first one being Class of '86, and last year being Bat Pussy. A hilarious send-up and fictitious making-of story of the notorious 1971 porno of the same name. And when I reviewed that book last year, it was under very interesting circumstances. You see, when Class of '86 came out 2 years ago, I did a book review for it. It was my very first book review, and I said that while I liked it, I did notice it had a couple of spelling typo errors. And Brad Jones, he actually contacted me and said that he hadn't noticed that and asked if I could send him a list of the ones I had spotted. I did, and amazingly, he asked me to proofread his next novel, Bat Pussy, which I did, and the book came out and hopefully looked its best. Brad actually gave me a thank you credit in the book, which I am very appreciative of, and so yeah, I can go to my fucking grave saying that I was the proofreader on Bat Pussy, and now I can boast that I was also the proofreader for Brad Jones's third book, Skinemax. It's crazy to think that I've gone from being just a huge fan to being the Cinema Snob's proofreader of choice. And for anyone who says the fact that I helped work on it a little might make me a bit biased, I am very good at being fair. I always list my cons, the stuff that I thought maybe didn't work, and I did that with Bat Pussy despite working on it, and I can do it here with Skinemax. And working on this book was very spur of the moment. I didn't even know he was writing a new book until about a month or two before he emailed me asking me to look through it, and of course I was gonna do it, and I gotta say, this was probably the craziest novel Brad Jones has written so far. I mean, all of his books have been crazy, but this is a whole new level. The best thing I could compare it to is John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. No similar stories, but the tone is the same in that it's just fucking bonkers. It crosses many different types of genres, and before I get into it, I just want to establish, Brad Jones, he grew up in the 90s, and he said as a kid he was a huge fan of Cinemax After Dark, or as many have called it, Skinemax. The time where starting in the late PM into the AM, Cinemax would start playing softcore erotica. It's clear that he knows this era and this programming very passionately, so he knew what he was doing when he wrote about it. And I just want to be clear, I did not grow up with the 90s Skinemax. I was born in 1995, so it was a bit before my time, and my family didn't have paid channels when I was growing up, so I didn't even get to experience it during the 2000s. With the exception of a few rare occasions. While we didn't have HBO, Showtime, or Cinemax, we did have DirecTV, and every once in a while they would give us a free weekend of access to the movie channels to see if it would entice us to buy them. We never did, but we still enjoyed whatever scraps they threw at us, and one of the channels made available was Cinemax. And while my family didn't really pay attention to this kind of stuff, I like to stay up late watching TV, so I did for a very brief moment get a taste of the Skinemax scene, thankfully before they ditched that whole part of their programming. So yeah, that was my very brief exposure to Cinemax growing up, and while I'm not as familiar, I have seen a couple of films from that era, so I know the type of movies that he's paying tribute here. And just to be clear, as with his other books, you're not supposed to take this 100% seriously. This thing is pretty much a tribute / satire of the Skinemax era of the 90s, and first off, I really enjoyed this. It was a blast. The main thing that stood out to me about this book was that I had no fucking idea where it was going. It was just all over the place and in the best way possible. Not in a unfocused way, but just in a twist and turns way. And the various topics we get in this zigzagging erotic odyssey. Brain-carving serial killers, masturbating voyeurs, mind-controlling body snatchers, thong bikini roller derbies, lesbian robots, cocaine, pinball machine sex, flamethrowers, intergalactic Nazis, and time travel. Yeah, I'm fucking serious. This book is not only a send-up to the erotic thrillers of the 90s, but also goes into sci-fi territory, which he's had a few sci-fi elements here and there, but never on this type of scale. And it has 3 parts to it, just like Class of '86.
The first part being called Bikini Roller Derby, with the plot centering around a bartender named Shannon Stevens,
who I'm pretty confident is named after Shannon Tweed and Andrew Stevens, stars of countless erotica movies of the 90s. Miss Stevens is in an unhappy marriage to a husband who doesn't really acknowledge her existence anymore, and after a brush with a serial killer nicknamed the Lake City Lobotomizer. Oh, and that's another thing. Just like Class of '86 and Bat Pussy, the majority of this book takes place in the fictional Lake City, a setting of not only his books, but also Brad's 2007 movie Midnight Heat.
as well as his 2017 movie Disco.
It's kind of becoming his version of Stephen King's Castle Rock. An attempt to spice up her love life leads to her getting in trouble with the law and being sentenced to be the coach of a roller derby team. And how does she get this team to rise to success? By having them perform in bikinis and other scantily clad outfits. And it's very clear right away, this is not set in reality. This is a very cartoony universe, even more than the previous books. Everybody in it is either nuts or just a vapid, self-centered cunt. And there's only really one decent character in this, and it's the last person you would ever expect. Detective Rick Wilson, who was a main character in the movie Midnight Heat. And it was crazy to see this character return. He's also very different than what we knew in Midnight Heat, where he was a psychopathic, cocaine-addicted cop. Here, he's gotten sober, and while he does still do some questionable things, he is, surprisingly, the least morally flawed person in the book. At least for a while. After bringing her bikini roller derbers to success, Shannon is approached by, no joke, Shannon Tweed. Yeah, Shannon Tweed is a character in this book, just like a certain former president was a character in Bat Pussy, and she ends up working with Cinemax. And Brad did a very good job of not just throwing the sci-fi shit at us. It was planted in little seeds throughout the first part of the book, and it works itself in gradually. We get a Tobe Hooper level twist of horror at the end of part 1 that continues to grow in part 2, titled Indecent Chemistry. Jumping from 1992, when the book began, to 1994, Shannon Stevens has rose in popularity as a sex symbol, and is now the head of Cinemax.
Leading to a lot of cameos from Cinemax royalty: Shannon Weary, Tawny McClure, Lisa Boyle, Julia Strain, and Kaya Sassoon. We also get some regular TV reporter appearances throughout the book from Tracy Savage, an actual news reporter and former actress of the Friday the 13th franchise, and Rhonda Shear, the cult icon host of the 90s USA Up All Night.
And she's like living on top. She's become very self-centered, very indulgent in all the vices that come with being powerful. And then, out of nowhere, she finds herself framed for murder. And it becomes kind of a court drama with a mystery going on with the Rick character. And it all leads to a very unfair verdict and a pretty sudden heel turn from characters who were originally behind her. And then the sci-fi element goes full invasion of the body snatchers. This leads into part 3 titled Shannon in Space. Normally I try not to go into spoilers when talking about Brad's books, but part 3, it's impossible because it follows up all the twists that have come in parts 1 and 2. Basically, and it's established in part 1, aliens exist, and specifically there's a prison that orbits the Earth called the SS Dark Ray, and it's where people commit crimes, go. They send Shannon there, where she becomes reacquainted with the serial killer from part 1, who we find out has pretty much been responsible for every dark turn that's happened throughout the book so far. This killer, called the Lake City Lobotomizer, is revealed to be an alien sent to Earth to gather intel on humanity and possibly save his home planet. And specifically, he comes from a planet built up entirely of Nazis. Like, everybody wears Nazi symbols, they're constantly sticking their hands out and going, Sieg Heil! They're all about making everybody pure. Like I said, body snatchers earlier. One of the things that goes with that is everybody developing blonde hair and blue eyes. And the lobotomizer wishes to rule both the Earth and his home planet, and he wants Shannon to be his queen because she's hot, and she's the only woman that couldn't fall under his spell. And the name of the planet that this guy comes from is, no joke, called Gastopolis. Yeah, I'm, again, serious. I don't know if Megalopolis played any part in the inspiration for that name, but nonetheless, it is just nuts. This whole book has been just a roller coaster of up and down, what the fuck moments, and the thing I like about it is it does a good job of emulating the movies it's satirizing, paying tribute to, but it's self-aware enough that it doesn't become as unintentionally funny as some of those movies. Like, the humor here is very intentional, and it works a lot of the time. The sex is legit steamy and, at times, downright pornographic in its descriptions. The violence is brutal when it decides to go there, and the book is not afraid to be edgy, push the envelope on what is considered, I guess, politically correct, and it's funny. The book with the word pussy in the title is the more subtle and tame of these novels.
That's fucking crazy, man.
But yeah, Shannon ends up on the SS Dark Ray, trying to evade the Lake City Lobotomizer, or as we find out his real name is, Jerry Dusick. She also tries to evade the prison's dominatrix warden and its sadistic head lesbian robot guard. Including the roller derby girls from part 1, there's actually a fair amount of lesbianism in this book. And now, I can't really go any further without diving into the ending, and for this, I am going to put up this timestamp. If you don't want to know what happens, how it wraps up, then go here, but if you want to hear my thoughts, listen up. After discovering that Shannon Tweed, who was thought to have retired, is actually an inmate at the prison, Shannon rounds up her other inmates, all of them clad in short, skimpy outfits, and they challenge Jerry, the lobotomizer, to a roller derby tournament for the fate of the galaxy and their lives. And it leads to a pretty chaotic, wild event. Culminates in a full-scale riot where there's guns, laser guns, shanks, and even a fucking flamethrower from the guards. And everything I've said before is fucking insane, but the last 10 pages are just bonkers in the way that I couldn't have predicted. After seeing his plan go tits up and the future of Gastopolis no longer secured, Dusick gets in his escape pod, which it turns out has a time machine built into it. He'd actually developed a weapon that has the ability to zap people, not to death, but to a different time period. And he uses this device to take himself back to an earlier point to try his plan once again. And Shannon, seeing that another pod has the same technology, hops in and goes out to try and find him. And I like connecting stuff, but I question how Class of 86, Bat Pussy, and Midnight Heat could all be in the same universe, because Midnight Heat takes place in 1987, Class of 86 has a nuclear apocalypse that just turns the Earth to shit, which never referenced in Midnight Heat. So I kind of got the impression that Class of 86 was its own independent universe. Well, the final scene is Shannon going back in time 10 years because she has no idea when Dusek went back in time, and discovers that he apparently went back even further and became the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Through that time travel adventure of his, Lake City has become the apocalyptic Lake City from Class of 86. We even get a cameo from one of the characters of Class of 86. It was just like, what?
We also get a fucking wild moment where a character is zapped back in time to the sinking of the Titanic, leading to, and I shit you not, a cameo appearance from the main characters of James Cameron's Titanic. I won't spoil exactly how they appear, but trust me, when you read this particular part, your jaw will drop to the fucking floor when you realize who these characters are.
And then it ends on a cliffhanger where she goes back even further, unclear when, but she's now determined to get Dusek and stop him from fucking up the timeline even further, so we gotta wait and see. And there's even a tease at the end saying that Shannon Stevens will return in, and this is apparently gonna be the title of my next book to proofread, Close Encounters of the Third Reich.
What can you say, but...
Don't be stupid, be a smarty. Come on, join the Nazi party. Ha, ha, ziggity ha.
I gotta say, this is a level of edge and sleaze that I don't think we've seen Brad Jones do since 2005 with his movie Cheap, and it's a pleasant surprise. And don't get me wrong, this book is batshit, but it's the type of batshit that I could get behind. It's not batshit in a way that grinds my fucking nerves like Osgood Perkins the Monkey. It's batshit in a way that just makes me bounce and smile and just enjoy the ride, like, again, Big Trouble in Little China or The Fifth Element. This is a new territory for Brad. He went places I hadn't seen him go before. I think he pulled it off very well. And yes, I know him and I've helped him out occasionally, but that doesn't mean I can't objectively take a look at his stuff, which is a good lead-in to what I always do to be fair with these reviews. My cons. The first one is kind of minor. The main characters, Shannon, Rick, are very well done, and Shannon Stevens, she's not really a likable character, but she's interesting, and by the end, despite her having a lot of flaws, I really do want to see more adventures with her. And Rick, he was very interesting to read, especially now that he had rehabilitated himself, at least for a while. But there are a lot of supporting characters in all three parts, and it's very easy to lose track every once in a while of who's who, and they just keep bringing in more as the book goes on. And while most of them are well written, I just found myself having to really pay attention, and the best thing I can compare it to is Stephen King's The Stand, where they had like 1 billion characters and they were sporadically spread out. As I said, Shan Stevens is a very flawed and not easy to like character, but she is an entertaining protagonist to have. She has a very fuck you attitude, which a lot of the characters Brad's written over the years have, and for the most part, it doesn't hurt her that bad, but there is one part of the book that kind of became a little grating. It's when she's on trial for murder, and she doesn't take the situation or act seriously about it for one moment, which is something that's bugged me in other mediums. Just, I hate seeing characters who are put in a real-life consequence situation and they don't take it seriously for a minute. It just gets on my nerves. But then we go into space and it all gets back on track. Next to Rick Wilson returning from Midnight Heat, we also get the return of Black Angus from Bat Pussy, the black disco club owner from the 1970s, and now in the 90s he's a much older, weathered down man running a skate rink where the roller derby matches are held. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with Black Angus, like I said in Bat Pussy, when the character was first introduced as a fictional character in the film within a film being made in the Cinema Snob movie, he was supposed to be like the ultimate blaxploitation action hero, which he wasn't in Bat Pussy, and I found that he was kind of the weak link of the characters in that book. And here, I wouldn't call him the weak link. I just think, why was this guy made Black Angus? He's not exactly a huge part of the plot other than occasionally appearing, and part of me thinks, like, this character could have been anybody.
I don't know. Just seems funny that the only time the character ever lived up to his awesome name was in the movie where he wasn't even an actual character.
And lastly, and this is the biggest con for me, I mentioned that Shan Stevens got into some legal trouble in part 1. This is due to her having public sex with her then husband and it being videotaped by 2 extremely horny video store clerks that make a habit of videotaping unsuspecting people while they're having sex and then selling the tapes. It's a little reminiscent of Getting It On, and these 2 guys, whose names are Doug and Dave, which I wonder if it's a tribute to Brad's very good friends, Doug Walker and Dave Gobble. It might be, but if I was them and I read the book with these 2 particular characters, I'd be like, what did we ever do to you, Brad? Because these are the most obnoxious pieces of shit in the book. Like, forget the Nazis. These 2 are the most grating douchebags in the story. They're practically on the same level as the young men you'd see in the early films of Eli Roth. They cause so much trouble, hurt so many people, and are so obnoxious and gigglish about it that I'm just like, ugh. The biggest con I have with this book is that these 2 assholes don't die by the end. Like, of all the characters who get killed in this, why did these 2 live? So, as much as I couldn't stand Doug and Dave, the characters, the real Doug and Dave are awesome people. As much as I couldn't stand Doug and Dave, the video store clerks, I kinda do hope they return in the sequel, if only for the hope of seeing them die horrifically. Preferably by giant worm rape, Galaxy of Terror style.
Jesus Christ!
But those are my cons. Other than that, the story was pretty solid. I just loved how you couldn't tell where it was going, and again, it emulated the films it was satirizing pretty well, at least from the ones I've seen over the years. And a part of this novel that really stood out to me as good were the action scenes. There's a car chase segment in the middle of the book that legit had me on edge. The fights are very intense, and the final showdown in the prison was a legit thrill-a-page sequence that was very reminiscent of The Running Man. The original. I haven't seen the remake. The comedy, while very campy, is legit funny when you know what they're paying send-up to. I appreciate that the book had the guts to go into sleazy, edgy places. There are a few unresolved things due to the book ending on a cliffhanger, but we can excuse that because it is a cliffhanger. So So I'm not ready to say these certain moments are hurtful to Skinemax until I read the next book and see if they get resolved. All I'll say is, without spoiling what happens to the character, don't do my boy Rick dirty. Don't do it.
Of the 3 books Brad has now written, I think I would say Class of '86 is still my favorite. Primarily because it's the only book that, when you really think about it, could be adapted into a single film. Bad Pussy and Skinemax, while a lot of fun, are very episodic in their storytelling, and if they were to be adapted, would probably have to be done as miniseries as opposed to a single movie. In fact, in a weird way, each part of Skinemax almost feels like its own self-contained story, kind of like a series of novellas.
So yeah, those were my thoughts, my fresh thoughts on Skinemax, the 3rd book by Brad Jones, a wonderful mix of erotic comedy and sci-fi intergalactic battles. Whether you enjoy this will depend on if you're sensitive to graphic sex or edgy jokes, but I think if you are a fan of the Cinema Snob and you know the type of stuff that he's done over the years, you will get into it. Hopefully it came out good from my proofread notes, and I look forward to the next one if Brad will have me again. I guess the big question is, as far as sci-fi books I've read this year go, was it better than Battlefield Earth by L. Ron Hubbard? And the answer is yes. This horny-ass courtroom alien adventure is a million times better than that piece of shit.
You are pathetic. Pretend that you're not a complete imbecile.
I hope you enjoyed this review. It was very off the cuff, made a few notes, but wasn't as organized as my regular reviews, and hopefully you enjoyed the book. I will see you again hopefully soon. This has been kind of a disorganized year, but hey, what can you do? Proofreading, making videos, takes time.
Make sure you have a little action, a couple of good-looking babes. You can't really lose.